The airport was already busy before sunrise. The loudspeaker kept calling out boarding groups, and the smell of coffee floated through the terminal. People walked quickly, some dragging suitcases behind them, others staring at their phones. It was just another weekday flight, nothing special, nothing unusual. She arrived early and sat near the gate without drawing attention. She wore a simple dark jacket, comfortable shoes, and carried one small carry-on bag. No expensive jewelry, no loud conversations. She simply watched. When boarding began, passengers lined up in a hurry, as if the plane might leave without them. She waited until most of the line had moved before stepping forward. The gate agent scanned her boarding pass and smiled politely. "Row 9, the agent said. She nodded and walked down the jet bridge quietly. Inside the plane, the usual shuffle happened. People were trying to lift heavy bags into overhead bins. A man in a business suit sighed loudly when someone blocked the aisle. A child asked too many questions. A woman argued about her seat assignment. Row 9 was near the front, but not first class. A decent seat, but nothing impressive. She placed her small bag above her seat with ease and sat down by the window. She fastened her seatbelt and rested her hands in her lap. The man seated beside her glanced at her quickly, then returned to typing on his phone. Across the aisle, a passenger struggled to push her suitcase into the overhead bin. A flight attendant stepped in to help. "First time flying?" the man next to her asked suddenly, noticing how calmly she sat. She turned slightly. "No," she replied softly. He nodded, clearly not interested in continuing the conversation. He assumed she was just another quiet traveler. As more passengers boarded, the plane grew noisy. People compared flight times, complained about delays, and checked their watches. She remained still, but her eyes moved often. She noticed where the emergency exits were. She watched how the crew communicated. She paid attention to the sound of the engines as ground power shifted. It wasn't obvious to anyone else. To them, she looked like someone simply staring out the window. A flight attendant paused beside her. "Ma'am, are you comfortable? Need anything before takeoff?" "I'm fine," she answered with a small smile. The attendant moved on. The doors closed. The safety demonstration began. Some passengers ignored it. Some listened halfway. She listened fully. As the plane began to taxi, she leaned back slightly and closed her eyes, not to sleep, but to feel. The vibration of the engines changed as they prepared for takeoff. The sound deepened. The cabin quieted for a moment. The aircraft sped down the runway. The pressure pushed everyone gently into their seats. Wheels lifted. The city below slowly became smaller. The man beside her gripped the armrest tightly during the climb. She noticed, but said nothing. Once the plane leveled off, he relaxed and let out a quiet breath. "See," he muttered to himself. "All good." She gave a faint nod. About 20 minutes into the flight, the seatbelt sign turned off. People stood up too quickly. Overhead bins opened. Conversations grew louder again. A slight bump of turbulence shook the plane. A few passengers gasped. Someone laughed nervously. "It's normal," she said quietly, almost to herself. The bumps continued for a few seconds, then stopped. The man next to her glanced at her again, this time curious. "You don't seem worried," he said. She looked at the wing outside her window, studying it carefully before answering. "Worry doesn't help," she replied. He gave a half smile, but still didn't understand her calm. Another vibration followed, slightly different this time. Not strong, just different. Most passengers didn't notice, but she did. Her eyes narrowed, just a little. She straightened in her seat, listening closely. Not panicked, not afraid, just alert. Around her, people returned to movies, snacks, and conversations. To them, it was just another ordinary flight. To her, something felt slightly off. The small vibration came again, but this time it lasted longer. It was not strong enough to cause panic, Yet it was not the kind people usually ignored either. A few passengers looked up from their screens. One person removed their headphones. The man sitting beside her frowned slightly. "Feels a bit rough today," he said. She did not answer right away. She kept her eyes on the wing outside the window. The sky looked clear, only thin clouds in the distance. There was no storm nearby that she could see. A flight attendant walked quickly down the aisle, smiling, but her steps were a little faster than before. She adjusted a loose overhead bin and checked that everyone was seated properly. Another shake hit the plane. This one was sharper. A woman in the back let out a small cry. The seatbelt sign lit up again with a soft ding. "Ladies and gentlemen, please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts," the announcement said. The captain's voice sounded calm, but there was a slight pause between his words. People hurried back into their seats. A drink cart was quickly pushed into its storage place. The cabin grew quiet. The plane dipped slightly. Not a drop, just a feeling of sinking for a second, enough to make hearts beat faster. The man next to her grabbed the armrest again. "That didn't feel normal," he whispered. She finally spoke. "It wasn't turbulence." He looked at her. "Then what?" Before she could respond, a louder vibration came from beneath the floor. It felt different from air movement. It felt mechanical. Several passengers started murmuring. Someone pressed the call button above their seat. A child began to cry softly. In the cockpit, warning lights flickered. One of the instruments showed inconsistent readings. The captain adjusted the controls gently, testing the response. The first officer checked the system display again. "That's strange," he muttered. "Pressure reading is jumping." "Cross-check," the captain replied, keeping his voice steady. Back in row 9, she leaned slightly forward, listening. She counted the seconds between the vibrations. Her face remained calm, but her mind was moving quickly. The plane steadied for a moment. A few people relaxed, thinking it was over. Then the intercom clicked on again. "We're experiencing some minor technical issues," the captain said. "There's no immediate danger. Please remain seated." Minor. That word helped a little, but not enough. The man beside her swallowed. "You think we're okay?" She looked straight ahead. "We will be." Across the aisle, a passenger tried to stand up, but a flight attendant gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "Sir, please sit down." The engines hummed steadily, but there was a faint, uneven tone hidden within the sound. Most people would never catch it. She did. She turned toward the aisle as the same flight attendant passed again. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Yes, ma'am." "Has the left engine been checked recently?" she asked quietly. The attendant blinked, surprised. "I'm sorry?" "The vibration pattern," she explained calmly. "It's not weather." The attendant forced a polite smile. "The pilots are handling everything." "I know," she said gently. "Just tell them to monitor the secondary pressure system closely." The attendant stared at her for a second longer, unsure how to respond, then nodded and walked toward the front. The man beside her looked confused. "How would you even know that?" She didn't answer. Suddenly, the plane jolted again, stronger than before. Gasps filled the cabin. A bag shifted inside an overhead bin. The lights flickered once. In the cockpit, a warning tone sounded. The captain's eyes widened slightly as he recognized the pattern. It was rare, very rare. He quickly reached for the passenger manifest displayed on his screen. His finger scrolled down the list of names. His breathing slowed. He leaned closer to confirm what he was seeing. Back in row 9, she closed her eyes briefly, listening to the rhythm of the engines like someone listening to a familiar song that had suddenly gone off beat. The intercom clicked again, but this time no voice came through. Only static and then silence. The static from the intercom lasted only a few seconds, but it felt much longer. Passengers looked at each other, confused. Some laughed nervously, thinking it was just a small technical glitch. Others did not laugh at all. The engines continued to hum, but that uneven tone was still there. It was faint, almost hidden, yet steady enough to matter. In the cockpit, both pilots were focused. One of the system displays showed unstable readings in the secondary pressure line. It was not a full failure, but it was not normal either. The captain checked the manifest again. His eyes stopped at a familiar detail. He leaned back slightly, thinking fast. He remembered a training simulation from years ago. A rare chain of small issues that, if ignored, could become something serious. He made a quick decision. "I'll step out for a minute," he said quietly. The first officer nodded. "I've got it." The cockpit door opened carefully. Most passengers did not notice. They were busy whispering, texting, or staring out the windows. The captain walked down the aisle calmly, his face controlled. He did not rush. Rushing would cause fear. A calm walk kept everyone steady. As he moved closer to row 9, the woman felt his presence before she saw him. She opened her eyes slowly. He stopped beside her seat. The man sitting next to her looked up, surprised. "Is everything okay?" he asked quickly. The captain gave a small, professional smile. "Yes, sir." Then he leaned down slightly toward the woman. His voice dropped low, almost a whisper. He said 2 words. Not her name. Her call sign. The change in her expression was instant, but subtle. Her posture straightened. Her eyes sharpened with quiet focus. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The man beside her looked confused. "Call sign?" he muttered under his breath, not fully understanding what he had heard. The captain kept his voice low. "We're seeing pressure fluctuations. Pattern matches something from years back." She nodded once. "Left side?" "Yes." "Secondary system lag before vibration?" He blinked slightly. "Exactly." Around them, passengers pretended not to stare, but they were listening. Something felt different now. The energy had shifted. She unbuckled her seatbelt calmly. The man beside her grabbed her arm lightly. "Wait, what's going on?" She gave him a reassuring look. "Stay seated. Keep your belt tight." The captain straightened up. "We'd appreciate your help." A flight attendant nearby froze for a second, realizing this was not ordinary. The captain gave her a quiet nod, signaling that everything was under control. The woman stepped into the aisle. She did not rush. She walked with steady steps toward the cockpit. Whispers spread through the cabin. "Who is she? Is she crew? I didn't see her in uniform." A child pointed. A few passengers leaned into the aisle for a better look. The flight attendant gently guided them back into their seats. Inside the cockpit, the first officer looked up in surprise when she entered. The captain closed the door behind them. The noise of the cabin faded. Inside, it was all instruments, soft alarms, and focused breathing. She stepped forward and looked at the panel. Her eyes scanned the readings quickly but carefully. She didn't touch anything at first. She simply listened to the engine through. The structure of the plane, feeling the vibration through her feet. "There," she said softly. "It's not failing. It's compensating too hard." The captain watched her closely. "If you adjust manually now, you'll make it worse," she added. "Let it stabilize first." Another light flickered. The plane trembled slightly again. Back in the cabin, passengers held their breath. Inside the cockpit, the captain asked quietly, "Can we save this without diverting?" She looked at the horizon line through the front. Window. Calm sky ahead. "Yes," she said. "But you have to trust me." And outside, at 30,000 feet, the aircraft waited for the next move. The cockpit felt smaller now, not because of space, but because of pressure. The soft warning tone continued in the background. The first officer kept his hand steady on the controls while watching the readings jump up and down. She stepped closer to the instrument panel, her eyes moving quickly but calmly. Years ago, she had sat in a similar seat, different aircraft, different uniform, same kind of silence before a decision. "Don't chase the numbers," she said quietly. "They're reacting late." The captain looked at her. "So what's driving it?" She pointed at a small indicator near the edge of the display. "That sensor is overcorrecting. It thinks the pressure is dropping faster than it is." Another vibration rolled through the plane, slightly stronger this time. In the cabin, a few people gasped. Someone began praying under their breath. The flight attendants remained composed, but their faces were serious now. Inside the cockpit, the captain made a careful adjustment. "No," she said gently. "Ease it back. Small inputs." He listened. The aircraft trembled again, then steadied, slightly. "Good," she said. "Let it settle." The first officer glanced at her. "You've seen this before." She nodded once. "In training, and once in real life." The captain did not ask more questions. There was no time for stories. Outside, the windshield, the sky was clear. The sun reflected softly on the clouds below. It looked peaceful, almost calm enough to forget what was happening inside the aircraft. Another alert flashed briefly, then disappeared. "There," she said. "The system is trying to balance itself." The captain adjusted the throttle carefully, this time following her timing instead of reacting to the warning tone. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the engine hum smoothed out. Not completely perfect, but closer to normal. The first officer exhaled slowly. "Pressure is stabilizing." "Keep it steady," she said. "No sharp corrections." Back in the cabin, the shaking had lessened. People looked around at each other, unsure whether to relax or stay tense. The man in row 9 stared at the closed cockpit door, his mind racing. He replayed the whisper he had heard. A call sign, not a name. A flight attendant walked down the aisle again, checking seatbelts, offering quiet reassurance. In the cockpit, the captain contacted air traffic control calmly, requesting a priority landing just in case. His voice sounded steady, professional. When he finished, he looked at her. "If it spikes again?" "It might," she admitted. "But now you know the rhythm. Let the system breathe. Don't fight it." Another small vibration passed through. The aircraft, lighter than before. All three of them watched the readings carefully. Slowly, the unstable numbers began to smooth out. The warning tone faded away. Silence returned to the cockpit, the kind that feels earned. The captain allowed himself a small breath of relief. "I was about to overcorrect." She gave a faint smile. "Most people do." The plane began its gradual descent toward the nearest airport. Everything now felt controlled, intentional. Back in the cabin, the captain's voice came over the intercom again. This time it was clear. "Ladies and gentlemen, we experienced a minor technical issue. It has been stabilized. We'll be landing shortly as a precaution. Thank you for your patience." A wave of quiet relief moved through the passengers. Some clapped softly. Others simply closed their eyes in gratitude. Inside the cockpit, she stepped back. "You've got it from here," she said. The captain looked at her with respect that needed no words. "Thank you." She nodded once. No applause inside this small room. No dramatic gestures. Just three people who understood how close things had come and how steady hands had brought them back. Outside, the runway lights began to appear in the distance. The runway lights grew brighter as the aircraft descended through the evening sky. Inside the cabin, the mood had changed. No one was speaking loudly anymore. The earlier complaints about seat space and delayed snacks felt unimportant now. Every passenger was focused on one thing: landing safely. In the cockpit, the captain followed the approach carefully. The first officer monitored the instruments, which now showed steady readings. The woman stood slightly behind them, watching without interfering. Her job here was almost done. "You're stable," she said quietly. "Just keep it smooth." The landing gear lowered with a solid mechanical sound. In the cabin, people looked, out their windows, searching for the ground. The man from row 9 leaned forward in his seat, his hands locked together. He didn't fully understand what had happened, but he knew one thing for sure. The quiet woman beside him was not ordinary. The aircraft lined up with the runway. The descent felt controlled, calm. A few seconds later, the wheels touched the ground with a firm but steady contact. The engines reversed gently. The plane slowed, and then it was over. Applause broke out across the cabin. It started from the middle rows and spread forward and back. Some passengers clapped hard. Some wiped tears from their eyes. A few simply leaned back and closed their eyes in relief. Inside the cockpit, the captain finally allowed himself to relax. He turned to her. "We owe you," he said. She shook her head softly. "You handled it." He gave a small smile. "Only because you reminded me how." The aircraft taxied toward the gate. Emergency vehicles followed at a distance, just as a precaution, their lights flashing but not rushing forward. Back in the cabin, the seatbelt sign remained on as the plane rolled slowly. Whispers filled the air again, but this time they were different. Who was she? Was she a pilot? I saw her go into the cockpit. The man in row 9 looked toward the front, waiting for the door to open. The captain's voice came over. The intercom one last time. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your calm cooperation today. We had assistance from someone on board with very special experience. Because of that help, we were able to resolve the situation quickly and safely." He did not say her name. He did not explain further. He didn't need to. When the aircraft finally stopped at the gate and the seatbelt sign turned off, passengers stood more slowly this time. There was no rush, no pushing. She stepped out of the cockpit quietly before. The cabin door opened. A flight attendant met her with grateful eyes. "Thank you," the attendant whispered. She gave a simple nod. "Just doing what I was trained to do." As passengers began to exit, some noticed her walking back toward row 9 to collect her small carry-on bag. The man who had sat beside her stepped aside to let her pass. "You didn't tell me," he said softly. She looked at him with a calm expression. "You didn't ask." He let out a quiet laugh, still shaken. "I'll never forget this." She offered a small smile and moved toward the exit. Outside the aircraft, airport staff waited near the jet bridge. The captain stepped out shortly after and caught up to her. For a brief moment, they stood face to face. He extended his hand. "Safe travels." She shook it. "You too." Then she walked down the jet bridge, blending into the crowd of passengers heading toward the terminal. No one stopped her. No reporters waited. No announcements followed her steps. Within minutes, she was just another traveler pulling a small bag through the airport. But for everyone on that flight, she would never be just a passenger again. Sometimes, the person no one notices is the one who quietly carries the skill to save them all.
Thanks for watching my video. Like, subscribe and share.